I'm WillRuder, and this is HBA After Hours, a podcast from the Home Builders Association of Greater Kansas City. Welcome back for another episode of the HBA After Hours podcast, produced by the Home Builders Association of Greater Kansas City. As always, I'm your host, WillRuder, the Executive Vice President here at the KCHBA, and with me as co-host is...
Keith Sauro, the publisher of the Real Estate Book and New Home Guide and Design KC. Today's my favorite topic.
Which is?
I love talking real estate.
We should find a podcast or start a podcast about real estate.
Do we talk real estate every time?
Something like that. I don't know. I blacked out most times. We talk about these things.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Schlegel and Associates Inspire. We got to thank them for making this happen.
Two fantastic sponsors, great participants in this awesome industry.
And a fun guest today.
A really fun guest. We've got with us today Kipp Cooper, President and CEO of the Kansas City Regional Association of Realtors. So, Kipp, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it, Keith. This is it's fantastic for us to be able to collaborate and talk about real estate.
Absolutely. Well, before we dig into the real estate, tell us a little bit about Kipp Cooper, how you find yourself in Kansas City doing what you do.
Oh, my goodness. This marks my 10th year with the association. I've been in real estate for about 27 years in government affairs and the CEO of associations around the country, and been able to call Kansas City home for the last 10 years. We've been engaged in all kinds of great mergers throughout the region. I've got a 7-year-old daughter and a wife, and we just absolutely love it here.
Fantastic.
Great.
And I know at one point, Kipp, one of your goals as a family was to hit all of the continents. Where are you at on your march towards global domination?
Yeah. So actually, my
You're going to have an MLS out there.
Yeah, my daughter, she is just a travel nut, and so our goal is by the time she's 16, we will have hit all 7 continents. So Antarctica is going to be our next big trip.
You should go in February.
You know what? Actually, February is a good time to go.
Is it a good time to go?
It's
is it the opposite?
That's right.
I was trying to be funny. And
No, it's going to be January, February. I mean,
Summertime at the South Pole.
But the problem is, so she's pretty tiny at 7, almost 8, and so she needs to be 8 to get into the Zodiacs to take her to shore. So we're actually going to postpone that probably at 10. So we'll be hitting Antarctica when she hits 10.
Well, yeah, very, very cool. Literally and figuratively. But
not in February.
No, not in February. It's summertime there. Pack your swim trunks. Well, Kipp, you know, this is a housing related podcast, and typically we're talking about home building, some of the supply side constraints that exist. But you know, you and your very broad and deep membership brings a tremendous perspective to the overall housing conversation. You know, when folks are trying to assess their own housing circumstances or to see what, you know, might be within the universe of possibility for their own family, what are some of the things that, you know, you would encourage people to ask of, you know, their representation as they, you know, kind of walk through what their future housing circumstances might look like?
Yeah, we have 13,000 realtors in the Kansas City Regional Association of Realtors, so we're really blessed. We have 935 brokers, so you have every flavor of brokerage from small mom and pop to big, huge corporate franchise, and I really encourage everybody, you know, interview at least 3 or 4 realtors before you really dive into making a decision. You want somebody that understands your family's needs, you know, puts your needs first. They're all true professionals, and it was neat for us when we moved here. I really found an advocate in my realtor and somebody that related to what my business needs were as a CEO of a company, and also what my future family's needs were going to be as far as school and the kind of neighborhoods. And you know, we all like to golf, so making sure that was a piece of it. And the craziest thing is my realtor talked us out of a more expensive property that they would have probably made a much better commission on, just because that didn't fit where she really knew our family's needs were. So I think it's really important that you interview a number of realtors and you really give them the time and really sit down so that they understand all of your needs. we're blessed in the Kansas City region because we have so many different options, from brand new construction of every different type, to very rural property, very urban property, and there's a great mix of age cycle to that. So people that want to be in downtown or want to have some older properties, that's great. To have some historic character, that's also available.
Let's demystify something. There are some people that think, oh, why should I pay a realtor? I can do this myself. Give me 3 reasons why they absolutely should use a realtor.
Well, I think, unlike maybe buying a car or picking up your groceries, buying a house is something most people are only going to do a few times in their life. And I think it's very important to have a professional that you can trust, that understands the marketplace, is able to recognize value in the home, because, today we don't just look at the home as a place to live, but it's also, whether it's fortunate or unfortunate, become a financial vehicle as well. So it is an investment, and it is something that having that second set of eyes or third set of eyes on is really, really important. So also they help negotiate on your behalf.
Sure.
It's much easier, getting involved, particularly residential real estate. Commercial is a little more distant. It's a little less personal, but residential real estate, it's somebody's home.
Emotional.
It's very emotional. And so, it's generally in any kind of negotiation, emotions can tank or can really put you at a disadvantage. So being able to work with a representative that can handle all of the emotional ups and downs of finding the right house and to make it that home, I think is really, really important as well.
Part counselor, part advocate.
Absolutely. So, advocate, probably first, counselor second, advisor.
By default.
By default. And in tough markets like ours, I think both sides are really, really important. It's important to have a great listing agent that prices the property appropriately and is able to sell all of the features of it, and also having a great buyer agent to really be that advocate and push through and find the stuff that's really pretty hard to find these days.
It befuddles me still sometimes if I run across somebody that has a for sale by owner sign in their yard. I just want to knock and hand them a magazine and say, look, go get some help, because you don't know everything. And, that commission that you're paying that you feel like you're throwing down a hole, what happens if the paperwork's wrong, right? What happens if they didn't do the proper searches? There's so many things that make it important, I think, to always use a professional.
Yeah, the level of complexity in basically every aspect of our lives has gone up tenfold. I mean, everything's just harder than it used to be. I think people just feel that, whether or not they've got an actual example or they just kind of feel it in their bones, that this is more complicated than I remember it being. But, housing in general has become a much more convoluted, confusing process for people. And Kipp, when you're talking about, trying to take some of that emotional element out of it and look at it more on the nuts and bolts and the particulars and the detail, it's something that, I've talked about in communities as well as part of our advocacy efforts, is that passion is not a substitute for expertise. What you want is a passionate expert, but someone with just passion, absent the expertise, going to get in a lot of trouble, probably.
Absolutely.
Talk yourself into a corner or be backed into one yourself. But, when we're trying to equip people with a baseline of understanding about where the market is and maybe how you as an individual are situated in it, what are some of the tools that KCRAR uses to not only equip the home buying public or the home selling public with that information, but your individual agents? You talk about 13,000. It's got to be really difficult to communicate with all of them and get them all up to a standard of understanding, as to, conveying accurate communication is paramount within an association. So what are some of the things you guys track? What are the things you equip people with to help give everybody that baseline of understanding to make the most informed decisions?
Yeah, sure. The great thing, and I probably failed to mention, the great thing about working with a realtor is they adhere to a code of ethics above and beyond just being a licensed individual. So that is a common bind of all of those members is they're adhering to a code of ethics, they're adhering to professionalism. And so the association facilitates that process for them. We provide all of the continuing education. We host, I think, over 115 different classes and teach over 16,000 realtors a year.
I've had the privilege of sitting in on some of them. They're very impressive.
We greatly appreciate that. Yeah. We provide lock boxes and key and electronic lock boxes in particular, which really make sure that the properties are secure. We know who's entering and what time they're entering. And so safety is a major issue for us, both for the homeowners and their property, but also for the realtors and the people entering properties, to make sure that we don't have a vagrant in a home or have any kind of, dangerous situation. So we've been able to really keep our members safe and keep our homeowners safe by having an electronic lockbox system that records every entry and every exit, what time, and also keeps people from being able to access those properties in off hours. They shut off at about, I won't specify the time, but
sure. They have shut off.
They have a shut off, and you can't go into one of those at 2 o'clock in the morning, as an example, which is something you could do with combo boxes. So that's another thing. The most important tool, though, is really the multiple listing service. So the multiple listing service is where all of the data is entered. And so we have generally over 40,000 listings per year within the MLS. So it translates to helping realtors facilitate the orderly business of about $14 billion of residential real estate. And so that's where realtors go, and they put all of the attributes and features of a home. And we're able to track the days on market. We're able to track sales trends. We're able to track the inventory, square footages, all of those things. And that's all available to real estate professionals that are our realtor members and members of Heartland MLS.
I know that in even the HBA's board meetings and meetings that we conduct, whether it's one of our committees and councils or just an informal gathering, there's always a reference to KCRAR's residential data and the dashboard that you guys put out. So tell us a little bit about, kind of what goes into the accumulation of that data and how you can put it into digestible pieces. Because when you get into housing data, oh boy, you can be a data scientist and get lost in housing.
I love the email they sent.
And so, you've got to make things digestible and consumable for busy people, because we're all busy. So, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about, kind of how you make that information available, how you put it out, how you collect it, all of those types of things. You get a little peek behind the curtain.
Sure.
The numbers madness.
Yeah. So anyone can go to kcrar.com. And they can go to our research tab. It's available to the public, and they can actually look at our market updates and market snapshots. And so we take a great deal of time and put that all into a nice little graphic, which shows month supply, days on market, average sales price, percentage of original price received, closed sales, pending sales, total inventory, and we have that all in kind of a one little sheeter that realtors can share and people in the general public can see. We also can go into detailed information about every marketplace within our footprint. And our footprint really covers everything from northern Kansas and Missouri all the way to the southern border and about 3 counties deep on both sides. So it's about a 50-county region.
Wow,
and
that's a lot of traveling.
It sure is. And we record all of that data. We have it in digestible bites for each marketplace. And then we have overall statistics that we're able to share. It's kind of interesting because most of the consumers out there and probably people listening on the podcast, they think they get their information from Zillow or Realtor.com or any of these public portals. And the reality is our data is actually what powers all of it. So all of that infrastructure beyond just our realtor members, we really play an important role in the data. We provide that to, Wichita State, where their economics department puts together a report each year.
Shout out Dr. Lawnhofer.
Absolutely. And we also share with the National Association of Realtors, which commits a tremendous amount of money in research and has one of the top 7 economists in the country, according to Forbes magazine, Dr. Lawrence Young. And he provides insights to Wall Street and to Main Street.
because we're all trying to find those insights, right? Because the burning question most people have in their mind is now a good time to buy, or is now a good time to sell? What's the answer to that question, just generally speaking?
I think the answer is always yes.
Yes. That's what I was looking for.
But it really depends. It depends on what's going on in your life. We've seen with higher interest rates it having a chilling effect. We had a lot of folks that locked in at 3% or less and have been hesitant to move, but life still happens. Unfortunately, people get divorced, they die, they relocate for job opportunities, they get married, there's new family formations, there are all kinds of blessings that occur, and it can't let a temporary interest rate stop all of that from happening, but it has had a cooling effect. In fact, we were looking recently. Dr. Jung, who I just mentioned, he just came out with a study. He said, if interest rates were able to get down to 6% again, that would open up in the Kansas City market about 40,000 more people able to afford a house. So really dramatic impact to the affordability of what's available based on interest rates.
And where is it right now? Is it like 6, 7, something like that?
It's the high 6s and just under 7.
Right.
The 2024 low for the calendar year happened on September 11th last year in 2024 at 6.1.
Yeah.
And so, I think cyclically speaking, if that were to get down there and stay down there, I think it, kind of comes to fruition with what Kipp was just talking about.
And what kind of effect has that higher interest rate had on inventory? That I know that's always a very, very hot topic.
Yeah, so actually we've seen a slight increase in inventory. We're up about 10% over last year, which is a good thing because we're still operating at about 2.7% months of supply. So we have a tragic shortage of available housing, and that's why working together with the building community is so vitally important. It is, I kind of look at, existing homes as really the foundation of our market, but the new homes are how we build the future.
Right.
And so without, that ongoing inventory being added to, it's just going to continue to keep the marketplace kind of where it is. So our sales are up about 2%. The inventory is up about 10%, and our days on market are up negligible right now. I mean, last year was 32 days. Now I think we're averaging about 35 days. So nothing significant. But it's, I would kind of call it a little stagnant, but there are bright spots.
Sure. And you said it was 2.7 months right now?
Correct.
What do they consider for our listeners a healthy market, if you will?
Really, 6 month supply is a healthy market. That's a balanced market for both buyers and sellers. And so I think what gets frustrating for the listeners out there is it happens in different segments at different times. So, as we see, it may be for a few months, we've got a shortage of higher end properties, in the 750 to $1 million plus, or it may be, lower price properties at a different point. Right now, I get insights into who's looking at properties in Heartland MLS. So we seed our data. And so I get to see where people all over the country are looking at every listing that's a Heartland MLS listing, whether it's on Zillow or realtor.com or any other public portal. I get insights of where that's being viewed from. And what's interesting is 75% of all of the people looking are looking at a price point of under $250,000.
Yeah.
And the scary thing about that is, our average price point is $398,000. So 75% of the people looking to buy a home are looking for a property that doesn't exist.
It's 6 figures lower than what the median sales price
Correct.
is.
Right. If you were to look, 5 years ago and look at the average price that's searched, would you find that it was always a lower price than what was available?
I'm not sure you would. I mean, we've seen in the last 5 years, we've seen a 40% plus increase in pricing. And so it really goes back to that supply and demand
Sure.
and the lack of permits being pulled, the lack of new construction that's occurring, and an emphasis by a lot of our local governments on rental and apartment, buildings over affordable ownership opportunities.
Right.
And that actually saddens me. I was a former legislator, former city councilman, and I've unfortunately seen through policy, whether well-intended or not, it has really had a chilling effect on the ability for people to keep up. And we're building a bigger chasm between the haves and have-nots, particularly in Johnson County, where I think your average new construction, new build is like $800,000.
Crazy.
Right.
And so and the builders are stymied because they're, susceptible to land prices. They're susceptible to the regulations. So you really can't blame them for trying to make a profit.
Sure.
But that inventory we need at the lower affordable mark really is being turned away, and instead incentivizing people to build apartments where they're never going to get equity and they're never going to have a position for a step-up home.
Sure.
Yeah, and if you're overly emphasizing apartment dwelling or those rental properties, you are probably abating some of those at some point. So you're reducing your property tax income, but you're banking on all of the people occupying those to be spending a disproportionate amount of their discretionary income and therefore collecting sales taxes. And so I think it's a very slippery slope for communities to overemphasize sales tax as where they're going to get, really the economic revenue needs that they need to continue to provide services to their communities. One of the biggest topics going on in state legislatures around the country, city halls and county commission buildings is property taxes, and just the explosion of what those entail, and the fact that when you look at community surveys, as communities try to put together comprehensive plans, the people that fill those out are saying we want more stuff, more services, more output, all of those things, and those cost money. And so if you're not going to be willing to reduce the amount of services, then you either need to raise taxes or create more taxpayers. And so that's kind of where we've said, really, there's not a cure for property taxes absent some discipline on municipal spending. But one of the things that we can do today is add more housing, create more taxpayers, people owning more of the roofs that they occupy. And so I think it certainly speaks to some of your lamentations about, the overemphasis on apartment construction. We're not anti-apartment by any means.
Oh, absolutely not.
Every unit of housing is a necessary element. And let's face it, they wouldn't be built if they didn't think someone was going to occupy.
No, it was a huge need.
I mean, look at our vacancy rates around the metro. They're negligible.
Right.
They're in the single digits. And so this is a place that people want to live in Kansas City. So, Kipp, you're plugged into probably an international real estate environment. What about Kansas City are people talking about? Is it positive, net negative? What's KCRAR's or the real estate community's determination on the Taylor Swift effect?
There's
a lot there.
There's a lot to unpack in that, and it was great because sometimes we have these discussions about people keeping their houses off the market and all that, and it's great because Patrick Mahomes put his house in the MLS, right, and so Travis Kelce's house is a big issue right now. I just saw a drone picture of it in the news, so I think we're doing kind of really creepy.
You're going to knock at the door with that kind of drone footage.
I'm really opposed to that. But, it's really been great coming into Kansas City, not as a native born son, but someone that's really appreciative of all that it has to offer living around the country where I did. And
because you're from the East Coast, you were saying.
From the East Coast, but lived in Vegas, lived in Alabama.
I lived in Vegas too.
Yeah. All great places, but there is something really special about the Kansas City region. And I think really from the time that the airport was approved, we have just seen, huge momentum And that was, having the NFL here, having the NFL draft rather,
Right.
having the first women's exclusive soccer facility built. Now
FIFA coming.
yeah, I mean, the World Cup is going to be enormous. So we actually do a couple of trips, and we had a trip 2 years ago to France for MIPIM, which is a world's largest real estate investment show. And it's really a pretty impressive site. And so you're getting everything going on in the world, from Dubai to China to all over Europe. And to the person, they were so excited that when I said, hey, in Kansas City, we're going to have the World Cup. And they said, well, we're coming.
Right.
We have a really great relationship with KCADC, and it's really important that we have, the economic development, and we're driving businesses to relocate here. Well, one of the things a good friend of mine is Tim Cowden, the director for KCADC, and he had a talk a few years back, and he said, when people are looking to locate, their manufacturing hub or their hub for distribution, they're looking at one location. Kansas City is a prime location for all of that in distribution. They can get anywhere in the country within a 2.5 day drive. And so he said, when you get to 2 headquarters, then it shifts to East Coast, West Coast. But when you get to 3 headquarters, you get back to one in the middle. And so that's what they're kind of backfilling a lot of these, data centers and distribution hubs and all of those pieces where, Kansas City is just vital to the nation's economy. And I think it's just going to continue to grow and really be a special place based on the diversity of our neighborhoods, based on the diversity of the people, and really
Cost of living.
The cost of
Let's
living.
just call it what it is. I mean, moving from the East Coast, you must have been in shock when you came here. It's almost like you hit the lottery.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Comparatively, we were. We went from East Boston and a house in the city to living in Overland Park. We didn't know which end was up, and even though our property values continue to go up, of course, we still see that. I mean, I've heard of people, coming from California and buying a house off Matterport because they're looking at the Matterport. They're going, this is amazing. For those of you who don't know what a Matterport is, it's basically a 3D view where you can walk right through the home. It looks amazing, but could you imagine just buying a home sight unseen, right? I mean, it's still going to go through all the checks and all the things that need to happen. But I mean, because the cost was so much lower, it made it a little easier for somebody to make that leap. Are we seeing a lot of relocation? A lot of people moving in?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, and what's been interesting is I get heat maps of where people are looking, as I mentioned before. So, during COVID, we had a tremendous number of people moving from the Chicago area. That was one of the hottest spots because they had pretty restrictive regulations, and people were looking to kind of get out of the urban core of Chicago for a number of reasons. And so that was a real hot spot for us. And recently it's been Denver. And so what I think has happened is you've seen kind of the proliferation of kind of post-COVID where people were leaving major metros or more expensive metros for less expensive metros where they could work remote. And then a lot of folks ended up in Denver, and the Denver pricing.
It's through the roof.
As unaffordable as some of us believe things are getting here, it's twice or three times as bad there.
It's crazy.
So we're starting to see a lot of traction coming from the Denver market, the Houston market, and the Dallas market. I think are all really solid marketplaces that people are looking to relocate.
It's interesting that you say that because, within our Parade of Homes app, where we're also able to kind of see where people are looking from, who's visiting these new home sites across the Kansas City metro. And we've got double-digit percentage daily users from outside of the Kansas City market. And the primary 3 outside of KC markets are Chicago, Denver, and Dallas. So people, it's good to have data reinforced.
Sure.
It's not just an anomaly.
Sure.
So, Kipp, with all of the good stuff going on in Kansas City, I think one conclusion that any reasonable person can draw is that we need a place to house all of these people. And they're going to want to buy something when they get here. So we talk a lot at the HBA and with our partners like KCRER and others about the supply side constraints that exist and just how difficult it is to get housing permitted, to get it built. It's relatively still somewhat easier to sell, but only because there isn't enough out there to buy. So their competition is there. But as our metro continues to grow and we cannot satisfy the demand that is increasing both through our organic population growth as well as in migration, I mean, this is such a regional draw in a place like Kansas City. Cutting down on some of those supply side constraints is going to be absolutely pivotal if we want to maintain that quality of life in that relatively modest price point. So, Kipp, you and I have had lots of conversations over the years about the collaborative nature between our two aspects of the real estate environment. What from, the new home construction side of things, would you see as being helpful to help alleviate some of these supply side constraints? And then, what do you hear from your agents about what's going on out in the market or what the home building industry should be doing to help, satisfy those?
Yeah, I think anything we could do within the local jurisdictions to ease restrictions is really important. We saw some onerous restrictions coming on with the energy efficiency code in Kansas City, and I think that had a real chilling effect on new construction and new builds. I think they've got to roll some of that back. There's been some discussion of that. If you're really interested in helping our environment, I think making sure that we've got a strong building supply to add to the existing inventory is going to have a stronger impact on higher efficiency than not building anything. Correct. Because you've made the restrictions so onerous and so expensive that it's really out of reach of people. So I think continuing to advocate to city leaders that we have to loosen some of these strict policies. Nobody's saying we're against health and safety issues, but there have been a lot of add-ons that politicians like to tack onto things that really make it unaffordable and unachievable. I think the builders can help in looking at zero lot lines, having higher density, building to higher density. There really is a strong demand for townhouse. There is a strong demand for condo ownership. And again, it gets back to my original point is we've got plenty of, condo apartments, but we need to have affordable ownership opportunities, for our citizens. That is the American dream. And that is what people are looking for. They want a place they can call home. They want a place that they can feel proud to have. And they need an asset that's building up equity over time so that they can stay able to make the transitions throughout their life. People, they upsize, they downsize, and really having equity gives them the functionality and the fluidity to be able to make those choices when it's appropriate for them.
True investment.
It is, and it's an equity stake in your community. Higher rates of solid home ownership are a hugely stabilizing factor in society. And as communities will wrestle with public safety and all of those things that are really important, the blocking and tackling of community living, higher rates of home ownership have a demonstrable effect on safety and the ability to operate within your community in an efficient way. And so, I think that at the conclusion of that thought is that higher rates of home ownership require higher rates of construction of things that can be owned and lower interest rates so people can actually get into them. Right. So
and that is the word. I'm sorry.
Go.
And that is the word, like on the street. Everybody's like, "Oh, when are interest rates coming down? When are interest rates coming down?" Any idea?
I have no idea.
Who does? Right?
It's our economist is looking at. He believes that with rates going down, we should see below 6.5 over the next year. So if we can get down to 6%, that opens up a lot of opportunities for housing, and it moves a lot of people into home ownership.
At the end of the day, there is about 1 million different variables, if not more, that goes into, what a housing market looks like. But, I just always caution the listeners and even our own members to not get too tied up into national housing narratives. What you see on CNBC or reading the Wall Street Journal is maybe interesting when it comes to housing, but it's not actionable here in Kansas City.
Very apples and oranges.
So you've got to really tune into those local sources of information, pick up a copy of Design KC magazine or go to KCRAR's website or kchba.org. And that's where you're going to be able to, gain some more of those local pieces to this very local puzzle that is a local housing economy.
Because we are more insulated. We definitely are more insulated here. Why are some of those reasons that we're a bit more insulated here than we are on the coast?
I think people here build roots. I think the businesses build roots. The people build roots. We have a more stable employment base, and we're not as susceptible to these huge highs and lows that kind of tourist areas or resort areas are. In Florida, I think to your point, Florida is seeing a huge glut of condos in the condo market, and the housing market is seeing some issues and some backlash where there was probably over purchasing during COVID and people could work remote. Now their employers are calling them back to their office locations, and so those lakeside properties and those mountain properties and Boise, Idaho is probably one of the hardest hit. And it had the strongest run, during COVID. People were relocating to Boise because if I can work anywhere, I'll work up in the mountains. And now that market really got oversaturated and oversold, and so they're having some real difficulties there. And California, another really good example. So I think we just don't see the huge spikes in the highs and the lows, for good or bad. The current housing inventory, which has really been the case that in the 9 to 10 years I've been here, we've really had a difficult market in lack of inventory. And so I think those inventory constraints have also kept us from the highs and lows of being overpriced.
I know during COVID, we were seeing the feeding frenzy. You'd have 12 offers on a house and in 30 minutes of when it hit, and, asking, over asking, people having to show up to the table with cash to actually close because it wouldn't quite appraise. I hear that's calmed down quite a bit.
Significantly. I think that, that was a period of time that was just like nothing, frankly, I'd ever seen before.
Seriously, yeah.
I hope to never see again.
I hope we,
for a lot of reasons.
For every reason, I hope we never see it again. But that, that pace was due to the lack of supply. And so I think that's an area where we've got to get builders building. We hopefully will see some rate decreases, which will free some people up. I know there are a lot of seniors that are in, 4,000 to 6,000 square foot houses that would much rather be in something more moderately sized.
Sure.
Their family's gone off, they're empty nesters. But they're in a rate at 2.79 or 3%, and it's basically taken a big step backwards. So I think the builders have got to be building in that more moderate price point wherever they can, and that's really going to depend on regulators at the city and county level to make sure that we can build more affordably.
Yeah, as much as we would like to say that, it's our members that create the market, they are participating in a market that's largely created for them. And they are not building everything that they want to build or are capable of building. So let's open it up and let that innovation flourish, because just like demographics change, tastes change, hairdos change, everything changes over time.
My hair doesn't change.
Well,
just kidding.
All right, we'll leave that one where it's at. But so do housing choices and housing tastes. And so we're not building the same thing today that we built 5 years ago, and we won't be building the same thing in 5 years that we're building today. But we have to let that innovation occur and adhere to those market triggers that, we're being told. Household formation and the birth rate are not necessarily dictating that we've got to add a lot of more 5-bedroom houses on big lots. Now, there's a lot of that. I'm not saying that that's not necessary or we don't need it at all, but it can't be the totality of what comes to market. And so I think that there are hopefully signs of life out there, that things are going to be changing, but housing is one of those things that no longer just happens. It's got to be willed into existence and fought for. So that's why, we here at the KCHBA are happy to have partners like KCRER to go try to make housing happen in these communities.
Absolutely. And we are as well. We love working with the folks at KCRER. And like I said, I've had the privilege of speaking to some new classes and different things, and sitting there and seeing these bright-eyed, excited agents, future agents coming in, and, people that are there for, continuing education. You guys do a fabulous job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's a labor of love. It really is.
Sure.
Well, putting roofs over people's heads, there's not really, you can't really assign a financial value to that in the satisfaction that I derive from that, and I know that Kipp does as well. So it's great to be able to do something that meaningful and also put food on your own family's plate while you're doing it. So, with that, we want to thank Kipp Cooper from KCRER for being with us on the HBA After Hours podcast, and of course, debt of gratitude to Schlegel and Associates, Inspire, our partners that brought you today's episode. Kipp, is there anything you would want to leave our listeners with that we didn't cover?
No, I think just emphasizing what you stated, buying a house, it's not just about that real estate. It's about the neighborhood. It's about driving great schools. It's about driving community. And, it's a really important piece of the economy. So I'm just thankful to be here. And thank you, Keith, and thank you, Will. It's a great partnership that we have, and a shared responsibility in making our neighborhoods, wonderful places to live.
Thanks for all you do.
Thank you. See you next time.
This has been the HBA After Hours podcast, produced by your local Home Builders Association of Greater Kansas City. If you'd like to have a question answered or a topic discovered on a future episode of our podcast, please visit kchba.org/podcast and leave that note for us. We'd also ask you to visit letbuildersbuildkc.com to find out how you, the average Kansas City resident, can plug into this housing discourse. Lots of information, education about how we can get housing built in our communities.